Imagine a young girl with flowing chestnut hair, riding a horse at breakneck speed across the Bavarian countryside, laughter echoing through the open fields. She's barely 10, but already fearless, diving off the docks to swim in the lake, hiking forested mountains with village children, always preferring adventure to sitting properly in a drawing room. Her world is Possenhofen Castle, a place where breezes blow in from the water, and the only rules she follows are the ones she and her siblings invent. This child is Elizabeth Amalie Eugenie, but everyone just calls her Sisi. She's the daughter of Duke Maximilian Joseph and Princess Ludovika of Bavaria, part of a sprawling family that never quite fit inside the normal lines of aristocratic life. While most royals endure daily etiquette lessons and stiff ceremonies, Sisi's father takes a radically different approach. He's liberal-minded, a dreamer who believes in mixing with common folk. He whisks his children away on hunting trips or invites them to sit around a campfire, ignoring palace schedules. So from the start, Sisi tastes a life that's open, fresh, and unburdened by pomp. A life where she can gallop a horse at dawn or fish at noon and not be judged. That early sense of freedom leaves a mark on her soul, a longing for independence that will clash tragically with her future role as Empress of Austria. Sisi's mother, Ludovika, is more traditional, though not entirely rigid. She's tasked with the near impossible job of finding good marriages for her brood of children, but even she can't fully rein in her husband's spontaneous ways. Theirs isn't exactly a love match, more of a standard royal arrangement. Ludovika reportedly wept the night of her wedding, and Duke Maximilian kept a string of affairs on the side. Yet the union produces 7 children, and among them, Sisi stands out. Born December 24, 1837 in Munich, Sisi grows up trusting her father's easy grin and ignoring the typical constraints of her rank. She delights in speaking the Bavarian dialect with local villagers, helps them carry produce, and thinks nothing of fraternizing outside the usual boundaries. In her eyes, that's just life, a grand swirl of curiosity and adventure. By the time she reaches her teenage years, Sisi is spirited, somewhat shy, and definitely not prepared for the labyrinth of Viennese court politics that's about to swallow her whole. The year is 1853, and Emperor Franz Joseph IV of Austria, 23 years old, a mother's boy by many accounts, has decided it's time to marry. His mother, Archduchess Sophie, is the real power behind the Habsburg throne, a woman described as the only man at court for her iron will and unwavering sense of tradition. She contacts her sister, Princess Ludovika, to see if Ludovika has a daughter suitable to be Austria's next empress. The plan initially targets Sisi's older sister, Helen, known in the family as the well-educated, polished jewel. But circumstances can twist fate in unexpected ways. When Helen, Sisi, and Ludovika head to Bad Ischl to meet Franz Joseph, their carriage carrying formal attire fails to arrive. Mourning dresses from a recent family loss are all they have, so they appear in black instead of the bright court finery that might have showcased Helen's elegant figure. Sisi is just 15, uncertain and emotional, still nursing heartbreak over the death of someone in her father's service. She's accompanied her mother only out of routine, never suspecting she might capture the emperor's eye. But the moment Franz Joseph sees the shy, wide-eyed Sisi, it's as if Helen doesn't exist. He's captivated. He's smitten by Sisi's luminous gaze and the soft chestnut hair tumbling down her back. Helen, the intended bride, is pushed aside. 5 days later, he formally announces his engagement to Sisi. There's no dissuading him, even though his formidable mother tries to reason that Helene is more prepared for imperial responsibilities. Franz Joseph's heart is set on the younger sister. In a swirl of pomp and disbelief, Sisi finds herself betrothed to one of Europe's most powerful monarchs. She's only 15. She weeps, uncertain why the emperor has chosen her, wondering how she, so unimportant, so naive, could possibly fit into the glittering world of the Habsburgs. She'd later describe marriage as an absurd arrangement, sold as a 15-year-old child, making a vow one does not understand, and then regretting it for the next 30 years. But duty is duty, and the union proceeds. On April 24, 1854, Vienna throws a massive celebration for the wedding. The Augustinian church overflows with nobility, all there to see the fresh-faced Bavarian girl turned Empress of Austria. Fireworks light the sky. Crowds cheer, seeing in Sisi a symbol of renewal for a country grappling with political tensions. Meanwhile, the bride herself can't stop trembling. She's catapulted from carefree childhood into a maze of strict etiquette. The Austrian court demands perfect posture, formal dinners that last hours, daily rituals so precise that even a wrong glance can trigger scandal. Sisi tries to keep up, but her mind drifts to the lakes and forests of Bavaria, where she could breathe without 5 ladies-in-waiting fussing over her every move. Immediate trouble comes in the shape of her mother-in-law, Archduchess Sophie. People at court call Sophie unstoppable, controlling her son like a puppet. She's the one who orchestrated his rise to emperor at a young age, and who intends to maintain her iron grip on the monarchy. When Sisi steps into the Hofburg in Vienna, Sophie stands ready to judge every breath she takes. If Sisi so much as draws her fork incorrectly at dinner, Sophie notes it with a raised eyebrow. If she laughs too freely, Sophie reminds her that empresses must show reserve. The tension doubles when Sisi becomes pregnant, fulfilling one major role of an imperial wife. She's barely had time to adjust to her new environment when, on March 5, 1855, she gives birth to her first child, also named Sophie, in a twisted homage to the Archduchess. The moment the baby is born, the older Sophie snatches her away. She claims Sisi is too young and ignorant to be a mother. She forbids Sisi from breastfeeding, from choosing the child's clothes, even from naming her. She declares the infant her own, effectively banning Sisi from daily visits. Franz Joseph is no help, hopelessly devoted to his mother and unwilling to assert himself. Sisi can only plead, tears in her eyes, but the emperor shrugs, saying, "Mother knows best." In 1856, Sisi has another daughter, Gisela. The same pattern emerges. Archduchess Sophie takes the child, leaving Sisi helpless. A pamphlet circulates around the court, mocking Sisi for failing to provide a male heir, labeling her an abject failure. This shakes her confidence. She's depressed, physically and mentally exhausted. The rigidness of court life chafes her free spirit. She longs to escape. So in 1857, she begs Franz Joseph, "Take me to Hungary." She's heard that Hungarian society is more relaxed, less bound by Viennese pomp. She yearns for a break from the oppressive palace corridors. The emperor yields, so they gather their 2 little girls. Sisi's rarely allowed to see them, but now she's traveling with them, and head to Budapest. Crossing into Hungarian territory is like a jolt of life for Sisi. The wide plains, the rolling hills, the proud language that resonates with an almost defiant melody. She's enthralled. She feels a kinship with these people who have long chafed under Austrian rule. She rides horses across the countryside, forging a bond with locals who are entranced by the young empress's unassuming nature. For a moment, she's happy. But heartbreak is lurking. In Budapest, the family suffers food poisoning. Franz Joseph recovers, Sisi regains her strength, and Gisela bounces back. Baby Sophie, however, never recovers. She dies in Sisi's arms on May 29, 1857, after just 2 short years of life spent mostly in the Archduchess's clutches. That horrific moment scars Sisi's soul forever. Her guilt is overwhelming. If she'd only been a real mother from the start, if she'd not let Archduchess Sophie take over. Back in Vienna, the old Archduchess pronounces this tragedy evidence that Sisi was unfit for motherhood. From that day on, Sisi is never the same. She sinks into depression, eats next to nothing, exercises obsessively, and possibly experiences the onset, or worsening, of what modern diagnoses would recognize as anorexia. She endures one catastrophic breakdown after another. The court grows uneasy, whispering about her fragile mental state. But, ironically, by 1858, fate offers a strange reprieve. Sisi becomes pregnant again. This time, it's a boy, Crown Prince Rudolph, born August 21st, 1858. Now, Sisi has delivered the empire its heir, a moment that electrifies Viennese society. For a moment, she wields more leverage at court. Even so, Archduchess Sophie quickly seizes baby Rudolph. The difference is that now Sisi has a bit more authority to push back. She starts to show glimmers of defiance, tutoring her children in ways the old Archduchess disapproves of, forging an emotional connection with them. She's determined not to lose them like she lost baby Sophie. Still, her real relief comes not from her children, but from a budding love affair with Hungary. She dives into studying the Hungarian language, a bold gesture that scandalizes the Viennese, who see Hungarian nationalism as a threat. She forms a close bond with Count Gyula Andrássy, a charismatic Hungarian aristocrat and ex-revolutionary. Rumors swirl that they're lovers. Some historians argue it was an emotional affair rather than a physical one. Sisi's diaries show her as extremely shy about intimate matters, yet longing for deep emotional connection. Whatever the truth, Viennese society calls her a traitor. They see her Hungarian sympathies as borderline betrayal of the Austrian crown. Meanwhile, Sisi finds comfort in Andrássy's presence and in the Hungarian cause. She might be an empress, but she's also a restless soul, yearning for a land that welcomes her free spirit. By the 1860s, her relationship with Franz Joseph is in tatters. She's rarely in Vienna, fleeing to Ireland, England, Switzerland, anywhere that gives her a break from the suffocating court. For the Habsburg monarchy, where producing heirs is the main job of an empress, Sisi's refusal to share a bed with Franz Joseph for years is a scandal. A big one. People whisper that she's not fulfilling her wifely duties, that she's endangering the succession. The emperor, sweet but spineless, tries to appease her, but she remains elusive. Then, in 1866, a geopolitical crisis erupts, the 7 Weeks' War, where Prussia crushes Austria. The monarchy is humiliated. Hungary's nationalist spirit flares again. Desperate to avoid total collapse, Franz Joseph realizes that Sisi, with her influence over Hungarian elites, might be the key to forging some kind of compromise. Sisi, seeing a chance to help her beloved Hungary, and perhaps to seize some personal freedoms, steps into the breach. She returns to Vienna, visits wounded soldiers in hospital wards, forging an image of a compassionate empress. She pressures her husband to negotiate with the Hungarians. On the other side, she entreats the Hungarian leaders to come to the table. This effort culminates in the Austro-Hungarian Compromise of 1867, splitting the empire into dual monarchies. Franz Joseph is crowned King of Hungary, Andrássy becomes Prime Minister, and Sisi is now Queen of a land she loves. Hungarians adore her, seeing her as a national heroine. She's rewarded with Godolo Castle, a country retreat that quickly becomes her spiritual home. In the midst of this political triumph, Sisi has let down her guard enough to conceive another child. On April 22, 1868, in Budapest, She gives birth to a daughter, Valerie. This time, Archduchess Sophie does not dare take the baby away. Sisi is allowed to raise Valerie herself, pouring all her pent-up maternal grief into the child. Freed from her nemesis, at least partially, Sisi invests heavily in charity, traveling to poorhouses, assisting orphans, advocating for more humane treatment in asylums. To some, she's an eccentric do-gooder. She even hires teachers to help her master ancient Greek, among other intellectual pursuits. But beneath the surface, her mental health remains precarious. Her self-imposed diets intensify: milk, broth, sometimes bits of cheese. She becomes an exercise fanatic, lifting weights, fencing, hiking, all to maintain a near mythical slender figure. She starves herself to keep a waist so tiny it almost defies nature. She refuses to open her mouth fully while speaking, terrified to show her teeth. She invests hours each day in hair care, her chestnut locks now so long they trail behind her like a train. Meanwhile, her letter writing and diaries reflect a deep sorrow, a sense of isolation. She despises official ceremonies. She might skip something like the annual foot washing of the poor, an event revered by tradition, and appear unannounced at a hospital or orphanage, quietly handing out money or comforting patients. In response, the press calls her the Good Fairy, while the stiffer members of court grumble that she's unpredictable, lacking the dignity an empress should have. A severe blow strikes in 1889, the Mayerling incident. Crown Prince Rudolf, so similar to Sisi in sensitivity and rebelliousness, is found dead alongside his lover, Baroness Mary Wetzera, in an apparent murder-suicide. The details are murky, but the official narrative says he shot Mary and then turned the gun on himself. For Sisi, this is the ultimate catastrophe. Rudolf had grown distant, battered by depression, locked in a disastrous marriage with Princess Stephanie of Belgium. He wrote a farewell letter to his mother, claiming he wasn't worthy of addressing his father and refusing to die alone. The horror of it all crushes Sisi. She withdraws from public life almost completely, dresses only in black, and sinks into a deeper pit of despair. She can't even look at Vienna anymore. She blames herself. She blames the environment of the court. She roams the halls like a specter, muttering that life is a prison. She says she longs for death to release her. Then, not long after, her confidant Andrassy dies in 1890, followed by her elder sister Helen. Every anchor she's had seems to vanish. She's now in her 50s, emotionally drained. She flees the empire, drifting across Europe's seas and railways, traveling incognito under the alias Countess of Hohenems. On ships, she demands minimal staff, wanting anonymity. If a storm batters the vessel, she'll have the crew tie her to a chair on deck so she can feel the raw force of nature. Perhaps she hopes it might claim her, though she never directly states it. Her letters speak of wanting to drown, to vanish, to be forgotten. She still writes poetry, an echo of her old rebellious spirit, but it's laced with darkness, reflections on liberty, the emptiness of aristocratic rules, the unstoppable sorrow of her life. Meanwhile, her husband, Emperor Franz Joseph, remains in Vienna, aging, lonely, and devoted to Sisi despite her absence. She encourages his close friendship with actress Katharina Schrott, figuring that if she herself cannot be there for him, at least someone else can provide companionship. Their letters remain cordial. He addresses her with undying affection, but she keeps wandering. She avoids cameras, hides her face behind fans and veils, seldom emerges in public. She's rumored to be painfully thin, almost a wisp of a person. She no longer wants to be seen, convinced her legendary beauty is gone. People gossip about her mania, her possible madness. Yet no one can deny that she is an icon, the empress who hates court life, the free spirit caged in a monarchy, the mother who lost so much. In September 1898, her wanderings bring her to Geneva, Switzerland. She still travels under her incognito, ignoring warnings that anarchists might be on the hunt for high-profile royals. There's been a spate of attacks across Europe in recent years. Various heads of state have been stabbed or shot by anarchists, hoping to make a statement through violence. Sisi either doesn't believe she's in danger or just doesn't care anymore. Yet her presence in Geneva is leaked by a local newspaper. As fate would have it, a 25-year-old Italian anarchist named Luigi Lucchini is in town, originally planning to murder another royal, Prince Henry of Orléans, who has cancelled his trip. Lucchini sees news of the Empress of Austria being in Geneva. He sets his sights on her instead. On September 10, 1898, Sisi leaves the Hotel Beau Rivage at Lake Geneva's edge with her lady-in-waiting, Countess Irma Staray, heading on foot to board the steamship Genève. She insists on walking without guards, having always detested fuss and formal escorts. Lucchini spots her, approaches, and in a rapid motion, stabs her in the chest with a sharpened file. The blow knocks her down. She stumbles, but in typical Sisi fashion, stands back up, thanks bystanders who help her to her feet, and continues her walk. It seems she thinks the man only punched her. No one realizes the lethal severity of the wound because only a few small droplets of blood appear. She boards the ship. Once it starts moving, she feels faint. Staray, alarmed, unlaces Sisi's corset for air. That's when they see the blood seeping out of a tiny, almost invisible puncture. The sharpened file has pierced her heart. Sisi loses consciousness, though she rouses momentarily to ask what's happening. The captain rushes the vessel back to shore. She's carried to a room in the Hotel Beau Rivage, but it's too late. 2 final, ragged breaths, and she is gone. At age 60, Empress Elizabeth of Austria, Sisi, meets death in an almost surreal manner, having spent years longing for an escape. The assassin flees but is captured. He celebrates the kill, is tried as a common murderer, and sentenced to life. He later hangs himself in prison. The news of Sisi's assassination jolts Europe. Another royal snuffed out by anarchist violence. A wave of mourning sweeps over Austria-Hungary, a monarchy already fraying at the seams. The emperor, receiving the dispatch, is reportedly devastated. "You do not know how much I loved this woman," he confides, tears in his eyes. So ends the life of a singular figure who managed to defy nearly every expectation placed upon her. She was introduced to Europe as a beautiful teenage bride, but never truly found peace as empress. Court life suffocated her. She lost her first daughter, Sophie, in a foreign city, lost her mental stability to a cycle of depression and anorexia, lost her beloved son, Crown Prince Rudolph, to a shocking murder-suicide. She tried to champion Hungary, forging a path that changed the empire's structure. She alternately rebelled against and collaborated with her husband's monarchy. She embraced a wandering existence, wrote heartbreakingly introspective poetry, adored the sea, and prayed for a sudden death that would free her from pain. In an uncanny twist, that's exactly how she died. Quickly, on a public promenade by a lake, her last day spent as incognito as possible given her station. History would romanticize her. People would call her the 19th century Princess Diana, an icon with an inner world the public never fully understood. She represented a shift in monarchy, more rebellious, painfully aware of its hypocrisies, craving the authenticity so often denied to royals. Her beauty regimen, once envied, now reads like a cautionary tale of disordered eating and obsessive exercise. She was called vain, but perhaps it was an attempt to control something, anything in a life that was never hers. She was criticized for neglecting imperial responsibilities, yet quietly gave money to orphans and visited wounded soldiers, never seeking applause. She recognized the cracks in a grand empire that would, within a few decades, collapse entirely. She remains a kaleidoscopic figure, restless traveler, grieving mother, political influencer, self-appointed exile, doomed icon. If you imagine her final breath, it's that of a woman worn by decades of heartbreak and longing. She'd circle the seas, chase storms, scribble poems about lost illusions. She would speak of being a prisoner in golden shackles, an empress whose real throne was a stable or a ship's deck, alone under the sky. The monarchy that once celebrated her arrival as a young bride had never fully accepted her rebellious streak. In the end, perhaps she saw her own death as the ultimate release. Her daughter Valerie found comfort in believing her mother died as she always wanted, swiftly, without lingering illness or doctors surrounding her bed. In that sense, Sisi's story is both haunting and strangely fitting. She came from a world of freedom and tried to recapture it until the day she was stabbed on the Geneva promenade, steps away from a steamship that promised yet another journey. Her legacy lingers in palaces turned museums, in the stories Hungarians tell of their beloved queen, in the diaries and poems she left behind. One line she wrote resonates deeply. I loved, I lived, I wandered through the world, but never reached what I strove for. Maybe she never found that elusive freedom or happiness she sought, but in forging her own path, embracing Hungary, traveling ceaselessly, shunning the demands of a stifling court, she embodied a new kind of royal, one not content to just wave from balconies. That rebellious heart, that refusal to be pinned down, is why many still find Empress Sisi so compelling. She was flawed, contradictory, tragic, and undeniably fascinating. Her end might have been violent and unexpected, but it sealed an image of her as a restless soul finally released from a realm that never understood her. And though time has marched on, we still look back and see in her story a mirror for all who feel caged by roles they never asked for, yet determined to find some measure of liberty in a world bound by rules.